Good morning, and we are in the week of March Madness as the NCAA basketball tournament started last evening, and those first two games couldn't have been more exciting. We have two more today, and then we go into full swing on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So if you're an NCAA basketball, college basketball person, this is your time of the year to really get in there and watch the games and pick your teams and put your brackets together. And as I was taking a break during the weekend and going in and out of commercials, watching the preliminaries over the past weekend in the various tournaments, I was reading this article on Psychology Today again, and I was picking off this, why social life matters. And I thought about the 14 reasons that they have about it, and I said, I want to go over to the Memory Institute workshop that Michael Dottino and Catherine Hagen run 2 days a week, and I want to throw that out to their classmates, to their students, to the participants in the workshop. And I wanted to take at least one or two of them and talk about, well, why is it important and what can they do about it? So let's look at the why, and then let's figure out, so what do you do about it? And it was a lively, engaging conversation, first from the why, and then second of all to, well, what do you do about it? So let me share a little bit with you. As it turns out, I only got to do one of the 14 that are in this article. And so why does social life matter? It's important as it is, managing difficult emotions is just the start of how quality friendships influence our well-being and longevity. After all, social life is the stepping stone to maximizing fitness. Mental fitness specifically is my interest. So of the 14 tips, the one I picked was friends buffer stress, so having social friends and having people that you care about, they buffer stress, and it lowers cortisol. So I started out saying, okay, how many people in the workshop, by show of hands, feel that you have stress in your life, which is obviously a silly question, and they obviously caught on to the fact that it's a silly question because, as I learned from Norman Vincent Peale years ago and listening to one of his cassette tapes, stress is a part of everyday life. We all have stress to some level. And the important thing about it was, how do we handle stress? What do we do with it when it hits us? And some people in the workshop said, well, gee, I feel like I have stress all day long. I said, well, what's the challenge that we have in our bodies, systems, in the biochemistry of our body, if we have stress and we keep it all day long? And somebody jumped in and said, because it raises your cortisol levels. I'm saying, wow, how many of you in the workshop realize that when you are in a state of stress, you're getting a spike of cortisol, and that having cortisol to some level is a good thing, but when does it shift to being a bad thing? And it's like, whoa, wait a minute, maybe you need to re-ask that question. And so I tried it again and asked, okay, if we are in a state of stress, what happens? And a number of people say, our muscles tighten. We kind of get hunched and we get strong and we're ready to have a fight or something of that sort. And I said, exactly, that's our initial response to stress. As we move into a fight, we're going to go fight or we're going to run. It's a threat to us. And so cortisol spikes, and it helps give us the energy or the defense mechanism that deals with a personal attack. Now mentally, right, when we see things about our life that challenge us or cause us to have a concern or a problem, then obviously we get stressed and we're in that. And so hanging on to cortisol for some level helps us to deal and fight and do the things we need to do to remain safe. But carrying it and holding on to it does what? And a couple of people jumped out and says, it raises inflammation in the body. Great. So now we have inflammation in our body, which means what? It means that, somebody said it means that it's like poison. Okay, so we raise cortisol. It stays in our body for more than that fight or flight, and we hang on to it all day long. And that's not a good thing, because the toxins that it creates, the cortisol flips from let me fight or flee to now I need to bring it back down, or otherwise it serves as a toxin into the body's biosystem. And so somebody shared with me at the break, I have a relative that is in that state, and it's impacting her well-being and her health. And she's always going to the doctor, and there's always something troubling or bothering her, and she stays in that state, and she's on different medications, and it's not a good thing. So it's a bad, it's sad for a person who's hanging on to it and doesn't know how to let it go, which then generated a dialogue in the class and saying, so what do we do when we have stress? So we have it. We're all going to have some level of it. So what do we do when we're in those moments of stress? And how do you relieve them? So some people talked about meditation. So I'll go into a meditative state. I'll go into a den or a quiet room or bedroom, or sit somewhere on a chair. And some people say, I'll go take a walk and sit on a bench in the park and I'll meditate. And so there's a debate over, well, how long do you need to meditate before you feel that you get some benefit? And somebody said, at least a half an hour. And somebody said, well, 10 or 15 minutes. And so it was a very interesting conversation on whether or not so here's what it netted down to. In 15 minutes, can you clear your mind enough and not have multiple interruptions that your brain is just running and running and running in this state of stress, trying to focus on what's causing you to have this stress and get you past the stage of rumination to where it just keeps spinning around. And is 15 minutes long enough, as opposed to should it be a half hour? And I don't know the answer to that. I am not a meditation guru, so I'm going to leave that to the experts to respond to. But that was a key question dialogue that was underneath the question of what happens to the cortisol when you stay in a level of stress, and what are some of the things you can do to eliminate it. Well, a big one came up, which was exercise. Doing some form of movement, doing some form of bodily movement and or exercise is a great way to reduce stress. So I talked about, when I have doctor appointments coming up and I'm a little anxious or nervous and stressful about them, I go out and run for 10 minutes or walk for 10 minutes. It's the important thing that we ultimately realize we have some form of movement, whether they be, stretching exercises, dumbbells, flex bands. We don't need to get overly crazy or exotic about it, but are we moving? Are we just sitting there and ruminating over the stress, or are we physically engaged in some different, pleasurable, fun activity? Sometimes I get stressed watching college basketball games. And so I'll record the game, and if my team wins, I'll watch it. If it doesn't, then I get rid of it. The Yankees will drive me crazy during the baseball season, and the Giants will drive me crazy during football. So I've learned how to take my blood pressure at times. I have a blood pressure cuff, see what my blood pressure is, and then manage what I'm doing at that point in time. But the important thing is to find something enjoyable that you're at least engaged in mentally, and you're not getting yourself all in this fight or flight. So I gotta fight this thing, or I gotta run away from it, and I'm gonna deal with the stress later. So what do we do with this? It's important to our body's overall biochemistries. And that was the discussion we had in the class. So some people talked about they'll go out and read the Bible. Some people talked about, I'll call a friend that I find to be fun. Some people said, I'll walk a dog. I will take the dog out for a walk and enjoy the day it's warm when it's not cold and it's not 20 degrees. And so it was a diversity of things that people recognized that I'm in this state and I'm fight or flight, and I need to find something that's fun or enjoyable or will take me off it, that's not stressful, and put me in a good spirit. And somebody said, well, there are projects that I do. I go work out in the garage, or I go work on the car, I go work on a craft project I'm doing. But if it's not working out right, then I get stressed over the fun thing that I'm supposed to be doing. So it was an interesting circle. But the point I wanted to get to the workshop was that when we find ourselves in a state of stress, how do we move ourselves through it in the most productive way and not hold on to it to where our whole biosystem is impacted. And even after I was done with the session during lunch break, I had people coming over and talking to me about their personal experiences, and I almost feel like when you address this through the area of stress, you almost become a psychologist and listening to what people are stressed about in their family, their kids, or a loved one, or somebody they worry about, and it causes them to pick up some of that worry. I'm saying, how do we deal with that? What do we do? And I'll do a couple more of these as I go back into the workshop. And I thought the 14 points in this article were just superb. We're off the week. We're at least at the midpoint, so we got back to a hump day, and I'll be looking at tonight's basketball games. And this is the good news. The teams that are playing, I have no interest in who wins or loses, and I find those games the most enjoyable. You have a good week. We'll see you back here on Friday.